The United States covers 3.8 million square miles of shifting geography, from dense Appalachian forests to sweeping western deserts. Most of it is paved over, mapped out, and entirely understood. But out in the deep woods and along isolated ridges, there are structures that break the timeline. We are looking at a 2.25-mile barrier, where the stone was intentionally burned so hot it melted into glass. We have an unexplainable 100-acre complex of subterranean chambers where the sun aligns perfectly on the equinox. And make sure to stick with us until we get to our number one spot, because we are exploring a massive subterranean polygon enclosing 20 square miles that looks so much like a man-made castle, it convinced an entire town to name itself after it. Welcome to the Arcane Atlas, where we uncover the geographical anomalies and forgotten history of the world. If you have not subscribed yet, hit that button now because we post historical deep dives like this every single week. Today we are counting down 10 ancient walls found in America that should not exist. Let's go. Number 10. Giant City Stone Fort, the Stolen Barricade. When pioneers arrived in southern Illinois in the 19th century, they found a whopping 400-year-old sandstone wall, barricading a massive 180-foot bluff. Assuming it was an abandoned military fort built by Spanish explorers, they did what practical pioneers do. They dismantled it. They loaded up the ancient stones and used them to build their own farmhouses. Between 600 and 900 CE, the late woodland people had dragged these heavy rocks to the edge of the sheer cliff to create a ceremonial gathering space, separating the promontory from the dense, humid valley below. Modern archaeological shovel tests confirm it was a long-term habitation site, not a military outpost. The wall you see today is actually a controversial 1930s recreation. The Civilian Conservation Corps stepped in during the Great Depression to rebuild it. But so much of the ancient wall was looted by local farmers that the government had to bring in outside rocks to finish the repair. You can still hike the steep dirt trail to the top of the bluff today. It is a monument to ancient engineering, heavily modified by modern theft. Number 9. Oley Hills, the Liquid Stones. A 900-foot-high forested ridge in Berks County, Pennsylvania, is covered in a 46-acre network of dry stone walls that purposefully defy logic. Most stone walls in the Northeast are the simple result of colonial farmers tossing rocks to the edge of a field to run a plow. The Oley Hills walls do the exact opposite. Rather than enclosing fields, they act like liquid. Built roughly 2,500 years ago, likely by the Adena culture, these walls snake up and over massive frost-fractured boulders for purely ceremonial reasons. Native American builders hauled thousands of stones up the mountain specifically to connect these giant natural tors. They created row-linked systems that bridge geological gaps. The builders even went out of their way to carry bright white quartz cobbles up the mountain from the valley floor below, just to embed them into the dark local gneiss walls, like shining jewels. You have to bushwhack through dense undergrowth to find them today. The massive walls and terraced cairns remain exactly as they were built. They map the spiritual energy of the mountain, ignoring human utility entirely. Number 8. Gungywamp, the Celtic monks of Connecticut. Twice a year, on the exact day of the equinox, the sun sets at the precise angle needed to shoot a beam of light down a stone shaft and strike a small alcove inside a mortarless underground chamber. This happens in the damp, mossy woodlands of Groton, Connecticut. Gungywamp is an unexplainable 100-acre complex of lithic walls, double stone circles, and subterranean rooms. No one actually knows who laid the first stone. Traditional historians insist it is just a bizarrely complex colonial farming site, where eccentric settlers built root cellars that happen to align with the sun. But alternative historians argue the standing stones are distinctly European, pointing to legends of Irish monks crossing the Atlantic in the 6th century. To make matters worse, legitimate excavations have unearthed 4 0-year-old Native American stone tools sitting right next to 18th century colonial pottery. The site is highly preserved today and accessible via guided tours by a local nature center. It is an archaeological nightmare that defies a single explanation, perfectly illuminated twice a year. Number 7. Spruce Hill, the Melted Wall. Prehistoric fires on this wall burned so violently that the temperatures exceeded 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, physically liquefying the sandstone into chunks of glassy slag. It is a 2.25-mile ancient stone wall built by the Hopewell culture, and it was intentionally set on fire. Spruce Hill sits on a steep-sided 140-acre flat-top mesa towering over a wide river floodplain in Ohio. 2,000 years ago, the Hopewell people selected this exact plateau and hauled thousands of sandstone blocks to the absolute edge of the cliffs. They built a continuous barrier that isolated the mesa from the rest of the world. The Hopewell typically built earthworks. Spruce Hill is one of only 3 hilltop enclosures constructed entirely out of stone. But they did not just build a wall. Archaeologists found clumps of baked clay retaining the impressions of stacked logs, proving the builders packed the stones with timber. Then, they deliberately burned it down. The inferno burned at a catastrophic heat. The sandstone itself melted and fused together, creating permanent glass-like scars in over 30 different spots along the perimeter. Today, the entire plateau is preserved by the Arc of Appalachia. If you visit in the spring, the flat top of the hill explodes with millions of white trillium flowers. Beneath the foliage, the melted stones and the outline of the massive wall are still visible. They built a fortress of stone just to see it burn. Number 6. Old Stone Fort. The Solar Trap. Because the pioneers who found the wall only thought in terms of warfare, they named it the Old Stone Fort. They assumed it was an impenetrable military outpost built by Vikings, Welsh princes, or Spanish conquistadors. The truth was far more complex. Over a 400-year period beginning around 80 CE, the Middle Woodland culture built a continuous wall of earth and stone enclosing a 50-acre peninsula in Manchester, Tennessee. The structure sits dramatically between the rushing waters of the Duck and Little Duck rivers. When modern archaeologists finally mapped the site, they debunked the fort theory entirely. The walls contain 84 separate gateway openings. It is completely impossible to defend in a siege. Generations after generation of Native Americans hauled dirt and loose stone to the edge of the river gorges to construct a colossal astronomical calendar, not a barricade. The primary entrance is composed of 2 parallel walls perfectly aligned to face the exact point of the sunrise on the summer solstice. To stand at the main gate at dawn on the longest day of the year is to see exactly what the builders saw 2 millennia ago. The sun rises perfectly between the ancient stone corridors. The 125-mile perimeter is preserved as a state archaeological park today. You can walk the entire wall system with the constant, deafening roar of the nearby waterfalls echoing off the gorge. The pioneers looked at a sacred boundary and saw a war that never happened. If you were finding this video interesting, drop a thumbs up. Let us know in the comments which of these ancient structures surprises you the most. We read every single one. We have covered some pretty strange spots so far, but we are only halfway through the list. 5. Armstrong Mountain, the wall to nowhere. The sheer effort required to build this is staggering. The builders had to manually move thousands of tons of loose rock into a 20-foot wide line along the very edge of a deadly 1,200-foot drop. This is a massive U-shaped windrow of loosely piled rocks crossing Armstrong Mountain in West Virginia. It extends southward for roughly 3 to 5 miles. It does not enclose fields. It is too low for defense. It is utterly unexplained. When European settlers first permanently documented the site in 1818, they found the walls already overgrown and steeped in local mystery. The structure sits at an elevation of 1,790 feet above sea level, running parallel to the steep drops of the mountain above the Kanawha River. Decades of archaeological surveys hit a brick wall when trying to explain them. The mountain is far too rugged for livestock, eliminating the idea of farmer fences. The walls are consistently about 2 feet high and show no evidence of supporting wooden palisades, eliminating the military fort theory. Experts eventually concluded they must be the ceremonial work of the ancient Adena or Hopewell cultures. To reach them today requires a grueling, near vertical hike up a mountain slope with no maintained trails. The miles of stone windrows are still sitting exactly where they were left, completely swallowed by the surrounding wilderness just outside the New River Gorge. It is a boundary drawn in the clouds that modern humans still do not understand. Number 4. Mystery Hill. The forged Stonehenge. There was undoubtedly something ancient happening in the woods of Salem, New Hampshire. Legitimate excavations have found carbon-dated Native American fire pits from 2,000 years ago and ancient lithic tool-making flakes. But in 1937, an insurance executive named William Goodwin purchased the 30-acre site. He named it Mystery Hill and claimed it was built by Irish monks prior to Christopher Columbus. To prove his theory, he simply moved the massive stones around to look more European. He used heavy equipment to alter the bewildering maze of megaliths, stone chambers, and dry-laid walls. Today, the site operates as a paid tourist attraction named America's Stonehenge. It is an archaeological crime scene. A genuine ancient indigenous site was horribly mangled with a 20th-century conspiracy theorist's renovations, leaving experts unable to tell what is real and what is fake. The site's most famous feature is the 4.5-ton grooved sacrificial table, complete with carved channels supposedly used to drain blood. Mainstream archaeologists identify it as a standard colonial lye-leaching stone or an industrial table used by 18th century farmers to press apples into cider. Visitors still flock to the rocky, pine-filled hilltop during the summer and winter solstices. We will never know what the original builders intended, because a man with a bulldozer decided to write his own history. Number 3. Berkeley Mystery Walls, the lines that make no sense. They form straight lines, tight angles, and bizarre circular patterns. They frequently stop dead or wrap entirely around a single large boulder, and they stretch for hundreds of miles. Also known as the East Bay Walls, these dry-stacked limestone rock lines wind through the golden, grass-covered hills of the Diablo Range in California. They range from a foot to 3 feet high. They do not enclose fields. They are too low for defense, and they completely predate Spanish settlement. Both the early Spanish settlers and the local Oley Native Americans stated the walls were already there when they arrived. The Oley were hunter-gatherers not known for permanent stone structures. Whoever built them spent generations moving boulders, weighing up to a ton across steep ridges. Because there is zero written documentation, the void has been filled with wild theories. In 1904, a UC Berkeley professor famously declared the walls were built by Mongolian explorers. Other theories range from extraterrestrial navigational markers to lost tribes of prehistoric migrants. Modern tests on the lichen growing on the stones suggest the rocks have not been moved in centuries. The walls frequently form massive 200-foot circles for no apparent reason, or simply terminate directly into the side of a mountain. Substantial segments are publicly accessible in parks across the Bay Area today. They behave more like a massive land art project than a functional barricade. Number 2. Fort Mountain, the Albino Defense. According to local Cherokee oral tradition, the wall was built to protect against the moon-eyed people. They were said to be a race of pale, subterranean albinos who could only see in the dark and lived in the region until they were driven underground. When the Cherokee arrived in the Cohutta Wilderness centuries ago, the wall was already ancient and abandoned. To explain it, elders passed down the legend of the nocturnal builders. Later, European settlers co-opted the mystery. They desperately tried to prove that white Welsh princes, specifically a legendary prince named Madoc, built the wall before Columbus ever set sail. At the dawn of the first millennium, builders hauled loose rock to the literal crest of Fort Mountain in Georgia. They constructed a massive stone wall snaking across the highest peak for 855 feet. It measures up to 7 feet wide in some places. Radiocarbon dating of soil from beneath the structure indicates it was actually constructed by Middle Woodland indigenous people between 100 and 500 CE. But unlike a traditional straight defensive wall, this structure features strange snake-like zigzags. It has circular vortex pits built directly into the stone. The wall does not just block a path. It physically resembles a giant serpent crawling across the mountain peak, complete with pits spaced out along its spine. The mountain peak is frequently choked with thick, blinding fog, perfectly matching the lore of the Blind Moon Dale. You have to drive a treacherous, winding mountain road to reach the state park today, followed by a dark, steep stair-step hike to the crest. The 855-foot wall is highly protected. A plaque stands near the ruins detailing both the geological facts and the legend. Whoever built it left no written record. They just left a stone serpent guarding a misty summit. Number 1. Rockwall, the underground citadel. You do not hike to this one. You drive through a typical Texas suburb. You pass the strip malls, the manicured lawns, and the sweltering, cracked earth of the sprawling prairie outside Dallas. There is no looming mountain or dense forest hiding the ruins. You just drive the asphalt, entirely unaware that just feet beneath the ground sits a massive, unexplained polygon. It is a subterranean wall perfectly enclosing 20 square miles, and it looks so entirely man-made that it convinced an entire town to name itself after it. In 1852, 3 farmers digging a well struck a subterranean structure composed of perfectly stacked, masonry-like stones. When they excavated further, they found perfect joints. They found what appeared to be mortar. The stones were staggered exactly like human brickwork, breaking exactly at the midpoint of the stone beneath it. This is identical to how a professional human bricklayer ensures structural integrity. They found a near-perfect subterranean rectangle outlining an area roughly 20 square miles in size. The town that sprang up around the site in 1854 was literally named Rockwall in honor of the mysterious underground barrier. Here is the thing. The discovery sparked a 170-year war between geologists and alternative historians. Mainstream geologists insist the wall is a natural clastic dike. They say it was formed millions of years ago, when sandy sediment was forced into deep earth fissures and cracked into block-like shapes as it dried. Science says the earth simply cracked and filled with sand, which hardened and fractured into perfect bricks. But locals and fringe researchers point to the sheer impossibility of nature forming a 20-square-mile perfect rectangle. Proponents of the ancient civilization theory argue that excavations have unearthed metal rings embedded in the stones, along with architectural features resembling archways and windows. They refuse to accept that the earth could accidentally build a better wall than human masons. The wall is almost entirely underground today. Nearly all access shafts have been sealed off to the public due to suburban development. However, segments of the excavated wall are on display at the Rockwall County Historical Foundation Museum. It is the ultimate geological illusion, a subterranean citadel so structurally perfect that a modern city built its entire identity on the belief that someone else was there first. The American landscape is littered with structures that defy our understanding of who was here and what they were capable of building. For me, it is Spruce Hill. The sheer, terrifying scale of burning a 2-mile wall until the stone turns to glass will stay with me. Which of these ancient walls surprised you the most, and are there any in your state we missed? If this kind of forgotten American history is what you are looking for, subscribe to the Hidden U.S. Town.